Welcome back to Wealth Mavericks, the podcast where we help doctors unlock the secrets to building generational wealth. And today, we're talking about building a thriving company culture.
So how do you run a thriving practice when business is hard and you've had no training? There's ancient wisdom that says something like, where there is no vision, the people perish.
Welcome back to the podcast. We're so glad you're here. Today, I want to start with a question for you. What is the best job you ever had? And what made it so great? And then what is the worst job you've ever had? And what made it unbearable? Chances are it was not how much you got paid or even the job you did, but it was the culture. It was how you felt going to work each day, the people you got to work with, and the way leadership led. And if you were clear on the vision and the role you played in that vision. We all have these experiences. And today, I want to have a conversation about what creates a thriving, strong culture in a company or practice, because we see this a lot talking to our members. There are practices that are just thriving and people are, they retain good talent. And then there are some, there's a lot of complaints and they can't keep good people and they are miserable going into work. And a good culture does not happen on accident. And I don't want to brag too much, but this is something we're really good at Terra Firma. If you know me or if you've been on a call with me, I say it all the time that I have never worked with such a group and in such an organization that is just so clear on all of this. And so the point here is that it doesn't happen on accident. So this episode is, what are some practical steps you can take to start creating or improving your culture, whether you are the owner or part of the team? So Joe, I'd love to start with you. We've seen this together firsthand, and you've really had a huge role in creating this culture at Terra Firma. So tell us what kind of impact culture has on a company's success.
Yeah, first, those are great questions right off the bat. Like immediately, companies that I've worked with came to mind and experiences that I've had. I think if I can unwind to the highest level that I can with this, there's ancient wisdom that says something like, where there is no vision, the people perish. And I think a company, when you're collecting human beings together, there's got to be a strong vision that people are pulling towards. And a lot of companies, I think, either they don't include all the people in that, or there's some disconnect. And when that happens, the people perish, right? Or you have a bad experience, or would you say it becomes unbearable for whatever reason. So I think that's really, really critical, is as a leader in your organization or as a worker in an organization, you need to be pulling towards a common vision. If you're the leader, your job is to cast that vision for people to follow. I think if you're to look another layer deeper, we follow a process called EOS, or the Entrepreneur's Operating System. And first of all, business is hard. Business is not easy. If it was easy, everyone would do it. There would be no employees. Everyone would just own businesses and they should make it happen. It's not easy. And especially as a doctor, if you're running a practice, you were not taught these skills. There was no business management classes. That didn't exist. There were no investing classes. You were trained in your specialty and really uniquely around medicine. So how do you run a thriving practice when business is hard and you've had no training? And so there are systems that we've installed into some of the practices that we've worked with that follow that EOS model. And part of the EOS model is like a regular meeting that you have where you're reviewing your vision, your goals, where you're going as an organization, and really importantly, who you are. And who you are comes out in the core values. And most companies that I've helped or consulted with, if I were to ask an employee what their core values are, no clue. The employees have no clue. If I ask maybe the managers or the executive team or the owner, sometimes they'll be able to pull out a piece of paper or pull something up on their computer and go, oh yeah, it's this, right? So those things, I know that they're easy to talk about. They're easy to theorize. They're also easy to forget unless you're intentional with it. And so bringing out core values in your company that should match who you are as a leader. So core values should look different from company to company. If you want to have a miserable experience as a practice owner, hire a bunch of people who are very different from you and irritate you, right? That's not a fun experience, right? So if you try to create, lovely core values that just sound good or you heard from someone else, time out. Like, no, go back. Start from who you are. So birds of a feather flock together, like find your people. This company is a phenomenal example of that, right? We have a bunch of like-minded people who truly love being together and building something together. Like it is an amazing experience that was not accidental. So find who you are as a company with your core values and attract people. Your hiring process. So here's a practical tip. If you are in your hiring process and you're not asking questions about how that person has lived out your core values, or they can't answer that, they're not a good hire. One of our core values is tenacity and grit, right? So what, Bob, Aaron, tell me, tenacity and grit, what does that even mean to you and how's that showed up in your life?
For me personally, it's like you said, it's hard. I always say it's messy. There's times where you slip and fall. There's times where you get punched in the nose or in the gut, and not really, but yeah. But sometimes it feels like that. There's times where you just can't sleep because you're constantly thinking about it. But getting up the next morning and getting into the office and doing and showing up and being present and doing what needs to be done to make that day better than the previous day is my version of tenacity and grit. There are some days where unfortunately they're back to back, but fortunately it's what it makes me appreciate the days that are amazing. But also those are days that shape me, make me better. So you can't run from them. You got to run into it. Ryan Holiday has a book called "The Obstacle is the Way." Right? When something's in front of you and it looks like an obstacle, we're taught in society to go away from it, walk around it. Or really, probably the best thing is to walk to it and address it and handle it, and then continue to move through that same path because you dealt with it.
Right. Aaron, what about you? How about go back to when you were a kid? What's an example of when you were, before your adult years and you exemplified tenacity and or grit?
Well, that's an interesting question for me because I actually don't think I had much tenacity and grit as a child. And I wish I did. And I bring that to my parenting now of like, I think we all do that. Like, what do you wish you had that you didn't get? And so I'm trying to teach that and instill that in my kids. I think that I discovered that later. But to me, it's getting knocked down 7 times and getting back up 8 because life and business will knock you down and you learn from it. And what Bob said is like getting up in the morning and showing up. Like that's how I feel. His mercies are new every day. And you just wake up and you're like, I'm going to tackle this day and I'm going to be the best that I can be. And that's all you can do is today. And I think such an important point is that you can lay out your core values as an organization, but you as the leader, if you are not exemplifying them and showing them to your team every day, why would anyone else want to live them out? I think that's a huge part of attracting good people to be successful together is it starts with you as the leader. And Bob does such a good job of showing us that. And it's inspiring and it makes us want to show up better because of it.
So I want to stay on the practical tip for people. If this was an interview and Erin answered the way that she would, in my mind, I'm like, okay, does she actually have tenacity and grit? She said, I didn't have that as a kid.
Oh,
okay. Well, so then my next question in an interview conversationally would have been, well, where do you feel like, you're obviously passing that on to your kids. When did that develop in you? When did that tenacity and grit, when did you first see that really show up in your life? Right? We don't have to go through the role play of you answering that, but I want to give you guys a real example of if I'm hiring 4 people who should match and live out my company culture that I want, then you need to hire the people who have that. And if you get red flags or white flags that go off where it's like, nah, I don't think this, move on. There are other people who will have those things in their DNA. You don't have to train. Very hard to train tenacity and grit. Very, very hard to train compassion if compassion was one of your core values. Very hard to train empathy, but it's easy to draw out of someone who already has that, right? So those are a few things. I mean, I've got a bunch of other like really practical tips, but number one, have a vision for your company that people can pull to and find the people who align with the core values that you deem to be important and hire to that. And if you have people who are in your company, another practical tip, print out your core values and make sure everyone has them and can recite them, right? So in one of the practices that we help and we have a deeper involvement with, we just launched what we call the daily huddle, or someone wanted to call it the daily muster. He was in the firefighting world for a while. So the daily muster. And we literally get together and I start the meeting by asking people, what is our mission? And for this company, the mission is having fun, delighting patients. We end that meeting literally with like a team cheer, like one, team on three, 1, 2, 3 team. So we end that meeting with delight on 3, right? And we get creative around like how we say delight. So one of them was, I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, and we're going to say delight. And it's got to be like synced up.
I love it.
And what's hilarious is like we've got patients that are starting to trickle in because it's like 10 minutes before we open. And one of the ladies, everyone was like pretty boisterous with this one. And the lady who was at the counter and like jumped. She was like scared. But it's like a reminder, right? Not just words on a wall somewhere, but a reminder constantly about why we're doing what we're doing. And in those core values, even having a core value recognition program. So when one employee sees another employee living out our core values, they literally go grab a special form that we have. They pull it out and they fill out their information. It's the name of the employee that they're recognizing. It's your name who's recognizing it and detail about what you noticed. That the instruction is, and they sign and date it. And their instruction is they hand that to their manager. Their manager hands that to the other person's manager. And then that gets fed back to that person. So the whole organization is aware of the actual living out of these core values. And you can incentivize people, to do that kind of thing as well. But the overall point is very few companies are doing this. And when I think back to the early experiences that I had at the best company, that I ever worked at, or the best job that I ever had, these are some of the things that were lived out there.
I love that. And I think before we wrap up, there are a few more practical things. Like one thing we ask in our discovery process as we're getting to know our members is, what's important about success to you? And then the answer is like how they define success for their life. So for your company, yeah, we're here to be successful. But if you were to ask, what does success mean for us as a company? Are people going to answer 10 different ways? That should be very clear too in this thing that we put together called your Vision Traction Organizer. It's who we are, who we serve, those core values, but then success should be, put down like in numbers. What does success mean to us? It can't just be like, delighting patients. That's a great first step. But then if you can't pay the bills, if you can't hire people, so numbers wise, what does success look like? At Terra Firma, we know the number of members that we're aiming to serve and the things we want to do as a team. So I think defining what success means to you. And then you talk about those weekly meetings, not just meetings to be a meeting, but to keep everyone on track, be reminded of why we're here and what kind of progress are we making toward that success. That just keeps people excited about what we're doing together each and every day.
I think if I can chime in really quickly, utilizing language like you just explained, Aaron, I think is a huge bonus, because we do have a lot of doctors, like you mentioned before, that are W-2, and you're in the business of yourself. You're in this ecosystem of yourself, providing your service to your employer who may not have this environment. But that doesn't change that you become that environment. Your environment should become their environment if this is what you're striving for. There should be a reason, you're delighting patients, for example, and you take that as your own mantra. Like we say, we serve our members. And that's because we want to serve those who serve. And that's our members, serving their community. So if you want to serve your patients, you're building yourself to be able to be giving of yourself to somebody else. The society wants us to take, and we're trying to give and give. And in response, the other party wants to do the same. That is the law of nature, is to reciprocate what is happening, and with the right people. And if people aren't reciprocating, then they're not the right people for that culture. And so as a W-2 doc, you're responsible for you. That's it. You're responsible for you. And if you change you and go through this mantra as well, your patients will see it. Your colleagues will see it. Your family will see it. But most importantly, you will see it. And that is such a powerful, I think, realization. A lot of us don't go through life until we have an event that occurs. And so why have an event occur when this can be a decision today?
I love that. You want to feel joy and peace. Like, yeah, what you do is hard and stressful in many cases, but it's how you're spending your life. And how you spend your days is how you spend your life. And so often in these first conversations we have, we talk about the values. And one of the biggest things is I want to look back and not have regrets. And so looking at right now, how do I feel when I show up to work? How is that impacting the people around me, whether I am the leader or, like you said, part of the team? We can control ourselves. And when we do better, everyone around us gets better. And we all want to work in an environment that we feel good about. So I hope that you got some practical steps here. If you need help, we can of course help you with this. We appreciate you listening. We'd love for you to share this. Hit subscribe, come back next time. And we can't wait to talk to you again. Go be a Wealth Maverick.